Y'all ever thought about the wild missions we've been on? We've taken out planes, trains, tanks. I'm not going to even think about the submarines. And now we got cars flying in the air? Who is he?
Jacob is Dom's brother.
Hey guys, Smiling Reviewer here, and today we are going to talk about Fast and Furious 9. Fast and Furious 9 is the latest movie in the absolutely insane Fast and Furious franchise, and I think the reception of this franchise is honestly one of the most divided, because from my own experience, it seems like people either hate the franchise with a burning passion, or absolutely love and embrace them, and confession time, I am the latter. I bloody love these movies, and I'll do my best at explaining why a bit later in this video. Fast and Furious 9 is directed by Justin Lin, who also directed 3, 4, 5, and 6 in this series, and is now returning to end the series with this movie, the 9th, and also doing the 10th and 11th, which is filming back-to-back next year to end this current story of the Fast saga. This one is about Dom and Letty struggling to adapt to their new quiet life with their son Brian, only to be roped back into the action when Dom's long-lost brother Jacob, played by John Cena, emerges and starts wreaking havoc that only Vin Diesel and his crew can stop. Okay, there's honestly just so much insanity that happens in this movie, and I think as an audience we've come to expect that with these movies, and no spoilers of course, but this one especially takes it to some out-of-this-world heights. Like, it gets pretty damn ridiculous in this movie. Fast and Furious 9 is actually so hard to review because, first off, I honestly thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I had a great time, but also some of the stuff in the movie was just so bad. Like, a majority of the dialogue made me physically cringe. At one point I remember during a conversation between two characters in the movie, I remember turning over to my friend and literally saying like, what the fuck am I listening to? But it's also part of the package of why I see these movies. Like, the thing I can't distinguish though is I can't tell if I'm laughing with the movie or if I'm laughing at the movie. But that idea in of itself kind of adds to the hilarity and the enjoyment. This film series has also just officially reached cartoon level. Like, each movie since the 5th one has just kept pushing the boundaries of believability, which I love, but there's still a very vague level of realism where you kind of question, like, not is it possible, but is it necessarily impossible? Like, there's still an underlying thought of maybe, just maybe, under the perfect circumstances, that could possibly be rationalized. But I feel like 9 is finally the one where you're just like, okay, that is impossible. Like, it's just a cartoon at this point. But I'm also still weirdly on board. These movies, they're just so damn entertaining. I've also accepted that any seriousness in these movies has gone so far out the window. And I enter these movies exclusively with my friends, with the intention of laughing hysterically and having a good time. And I think that's the key to these movies. The best way to describe this series' transformation is it basically has become a giant inside joke to me. Like, you know when you're at a party or at a gath and your best friend says some random inside joke that makes you laugh hysterically, but everyone else in the room is like, what? That's like not even remotely funny. This is what the Fast and Furious franchise is to me. I really feel like you're either completely on board or it's just not your cup of tea. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But honestly, even though the movie was significantly more ridiculous than I was expecting, it was also a lot better than I was expecting. Before going into the movie, I noticed it had a 2.5-hour runtime, and I was like, oh my god, this movie is going to feel never-ending, isn't it? It's going to probably drag pretty bad. And you know what? It actually didn't at all. Like, I thought this movie was surprisingly well-paced. They did a great job at keeping it constantly entertaining, and there was no point where I was waiting for the movie to end. There were also a lot of flashback scenes telling us the history of Dominic and Jacob Toretto and why they ended up going on separate paths and whatnot. And these were surprisingly not terrible either. I think the actors who played their younger counterparts actually did a pretty decent job. And while I didn't really mind these scenes upon my first viewing, I feel like these flashback scenes just might be the scenes that I would want to skip past upon a rewatch, but I'm not too sure about that. The reason I say that I might skip it though is another thing about this movie that I was genuinely disappointed about was John Cena does pretty much nothing in this movie. Like, I was so excited for him to be in this movie, let alone as a villain. But he's completely wasted. I was really hoping he'd have a chance to really ham it up and like play like a super over-the-top 90s villain who really felt like a threat or someone you wouldn't want to cross paths with. But honestly, he didn't do anything that I can even remember. I hate when movies tell you someone is bad. Like, oh, I wouldn't mess with him. He's a master assassin and a thief and a really high-performance driver. Like, cool. Like, show me that. Don't tell me I should be scared of him. Show me why I should be scared of him. But I really do appreciate this series, and it really does have some fun, creative aspects. And it's also kind of refreshing to have at least one film series that just says, fuck the rules. Like, they just prioritize entertainment first and foremost, and I kind of respect it. For example, I had a couple friends who went and saw this movie, and they weren't really into the Fast and Furious franchise, hadn't even seen the other ones, and I was like, oh my god, they're gonna absolutely hate this movie. And they actually didn't, and I was genuinely so shocked. And they said the reason they enjoyed it because, one, was because I told them it was really ridiculous and absurd, so they went into the movie expecting that. And two, they just said it was really different and cool, which is totally why I go to see these movies. I know they're just nonsensical at this point, but also, where else can you get this over-the-top, ridiculous entertainment? And I praise Justin Lin for that, because he was truly the one who was able to transform a simple series about street racers and undercover cops into what is Universal Studios' biggest franchise when he came on board for Tokyo Drift. And I could just imagine Justin Lin one day in 2006 went to Universal Studios and was just like, hear me out guys. Car go vroom good, but what if car also go boom? And then Universal were like, another thing I've always appreciated about this film series as well is the insane stunts they pull off. A reason most of the crazy and absurd stuff you see actually works is because they really do put in a lot of effort to make it look as real as possible. So a lot of the destruction you see is actually practical with CGI touch-ups afterwards. The behind the scenes of each of these movies will never fail to blow my mind. It really is amazing the amount of effort and creativity they put into crafting these sequences. Fast 5 will always have a special place in my heart as genuinely one of my favorite action movies. I also think it was the last genuinely good Fast and Furious movies. Not that the other ones weren't enjoyable, but I say the last genuinely good because it was the last movie that felt like it actually had stakes and was somewhat grounded in realism, even though it did start to venture into the realm of extreme absurdity. But since that one, the Fast and Furious movies have just kept upping the stakes every single movie. And it's reached a point where it's kind of irrelevant. Like in 7 and 8, we had the MacGuffin or plot device of the God's Eye, which was a device that could hack into any camera in the world. And then in this one, the 9th one, we have another MacGuffin introduced that I don't even remember the name to, which kind of shows how insignificant it was. But it's a device that can essentially hack into any device in the world and control it. It's literally the exact same thing as the God's Eye in the last movie, but instead of only being able to hack cameras, it can hack everything. Like, God, I love this series, but that is just like insanely lazy writing. I have an odd feeling that Justin Lin didn't even watch the 7th or 8th one, and no one bothered to tell him that the past 2 movies he didn't direct had a device that was basically the same. But yeah, with these stakes constantly increasing and our characters constantly leaving unscathed or magically brought back to life, there's just no fear for the characters at any point. Not just because of the stakes though, but I just genuinely could not care less about any of the characters. For example, in my recent review for A Quiet Place Part 2, and firstly, I know how dumb this is for me to even be comparing these movies because they literally could not be any different. But in that review, I mentioned that a lot of the reason the tension works so effectively is because you genuinely care for the family and those characters so much. And for all the talk of family in the Fast and Furious films, you'd think I care a bit more about the crew, but I just don't. And I feel like a major reason for this is the absence of Paul Walker. Paul Walker's character Brian throughout the series was genuinely the one character who felt grounded in reality and was actually a good character. And his passing in real life was so unfortunate, and I think the Fast and Furious franchise really began to dip without him. As cheesy as it sounds, he really was the glue that held together the Fast family, and I feel like he was like one of the few actors who really understood what his role needed to be. I say that because the current crew feels so disjointed without him, and the reason why I think that is because one half of the crew is like, you've got this super badass and serious side, and then the other half of the crew is like comedy club in the corner, just like they're just there to crack jokes essentially. Whereas that worked better with Paul Walker because he was the only one who seemed to be able to walk between the lines of serious character, but also funny and charismatic. So it really was his interaction with both groups that made it feel more connected, other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I think he's the only other person who can do that as well as Paul Walker did, but he's not in this one either, hence here we are. But yeah, watching the crew in this movie, it genuinely feels like watching two polar opposite crews sometimes. Like, even though they're all together for most of the movie, I don't think Vin Diesel has a single direct interaction with any of the funny people in the group. But also, honestly, if there was a scene where he sat down and had a heart-to-heart with one of them, I would probably be like, what on earth is happening? This is weird. But with Paul Walker's character, he could do that with any of them, and it wouldn't have been weird, because he felt like a real character that worked on both sides. But anyways, I think I've put more thought into the Fast and Furious franchise than anyone else in the world has, so let's move on from that. Fast and Furious 9, though, was ultimately a really fun time I had with my friends. This one really pushed it to another level, and I honestly don't know where they go from here, but you can bet I'll be there for the next ones. Fast and Furious 9 gets a nice 7 out of 10 for me. I don't think it was as good as 7, but I thought it was a lot better than 8, especially from a pacing standpoint. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I enjoyed making it for you guys. Don't forget to leave a like if you did, subscribe for some more content, and I will see you guys in the next one. See you later.